For those of you who are watching, who are tuning in online, I'm trying to keep these people around here straight. All right.
Angels last week.
What was up with that? Did y'all have a room full? Oh, okay. I'm about to say, don't be lying. Don't be lying.
That's what I was picturing. I was like, people came out of the woodworks when they found that Lane wasn't going to be there.
Like, what difference does it make if I wasn't going to be here if it was on the screen? But anyway.
That's what I said. I stayed home and watched you.
Well, and that's why we wanted to promote it, because I didn't want anybody to get it here and think, well, I could have done this at home. So anyway. All right. Thank y'all for joining with us online, whoever's watching, whether it's live or as a recording. Thank y'all for being here in person. We'll start off with a few things about today, and then we're going to blow your mind with some math. Y'all excited about math?
I didn't sign up for math class.
Yeah, we're in math class today. But it's going to be some of the coolest, it might be the coolest information that you're going to get the entire study of the book of Revelation. How about that? How about them apples? Okay, it's cool to me anyway. Okay, anybody know of any birthdays? Like, y'all have any personal birthdays? People in your family? People that you know?
Deborah Chester,
Deborah Chester. Well, happy birthday to Deborah.
big town in Texas.
Okay, all right, all the way to Texas. Well, I've got a few, and then a few other things going on. Hey, Ann, come on in. On this date, 1475, happy birthday to Michelangelo, the Italian painter and sculptor and all that. Painted the Sistine Chapel, the ceiling of it. Born in Tuscany on this date in 1475. In 1857, happy birthday to George Dayton. Anybody know who George Dayton is?
Did he discover Ohio?
Nope. He was the founder. He was the founder of Target. So anyway, and oddly enough, he was born in New York, but he died in 1938. 1906 on this date. Happy birthday to Lou Costello of Abbott and Costello. You know who's on first? Born in Paterson, New Jersey. He died in 1959. So his little comedy act, it carried over quite well. 1923, as I told y'all, I do some late night TV and all that. On this date in 1923, Ed McMahon was born. Y'all know Ed McMahon from the Tonight Show, Johnny Carson? He's born in Detroit. He died in 2009. 1937, again, this is just my interest. I do weed out people that I don't think you're interested in, but not all of them. But for me, interesting, Valentina Tereshkova, I guess. She's 87 years old today. She was the first woman in space. She went up in space in Vostok number 6. She was born in Russia. She was a Russian astronaut. And then in 1972, you probably heard of a guy named Shaquille O'Neal. So this is Shaq's birthday, 52nd birthday. Born in Newark, New Jersey. A few deaths on this date that I thought were interesting. Not that I revel in deaths, but on this date in 1836, Davy Crockett died. How did he die? Where did he die?
Texas? Alamo.
The Alamo, yeah, that's right. He was only 49 years old when he died. 1900. Some of you got, well, I don't know if anybody in this church, last church had a lot of guys who were into this. 1900, Gottlieb, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Gottlieb Daimler died. He was a German engineer and inventor. He designed the first motorcycle. He was 65 years old when we got. Anybody ride motorcycles? Anybody in the church ride motorcycles? You do? Okay. All right. Well, there you go. 1941, John Gutzon Borglum. He was an American sculptor. He designed Mount Rushmore. Yep. And he was overseeing the whole process until he died in 1941. He was 73 when he died. And honestly, I had forgotten in 2006 that Kirby Puckett died. If you follow baseball, but it was interesting that a professional athlete of his caliber, because he was an MVP, one year. He had won the World Series. He was like many times All-Star and all that. But he was only 45 when he had a stroke. It's kind of a wake-up call, you know. And then on this date in 2016, Nancy Reagan died. She was 94 years old. Few interesting things on this date in 1808. Any of y'all play any instruments? Like ever played any instruments?
I used to.
Okay. What now?
Ann plays the piano.
Okay. Well, on this date in 1808, the first United States College Orchestra was founded. So it was founded at Harvard. I did not know. I was an English major, you know. So of course Edgar Allan Poe, and I've been to his grave, those kind of things. He's a very dark individual. What I didn't know is he was in the military, and it was on this date in 1831 that he was court-martialed and kicked out of West Point, but for gross negligence of duty and for disobeying orders. So kind of not a surprise for him. And then, so like we said in 1936, the Alamo, after 13 days of fighting, they were overtaken. 1857, not our brightest day in the United States, but on this date in 1857, the Dred Scott decision came down, which was where the U.S. Supreme Court said that Africans could not be U.S. citizens. So obviously that was overturned. A date which will live in infamy, going back to your high school chemistry days. 1869, Dmitri Mendeleev presented the first periodic table. I hated those things, of the elements to the Russian Chemical Society. Y'all remember memorizing that thing? I hated trying to memorize where it went or what line. Who cared about all that stuff? It has not helped me one single day since high school, that thing. But anyway, first one was granted on this day. In 1899, aspirin was patented by the German company Bayer. 1933, first press conference by a first lady. Anybody happen to know who that was? 1933, first lady? Eleanor Roosevelt. Yep. First press conference by first lady. Two fun things for kids. 1945, George Nissen of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, gets a patent for the first modern trampoline. Love it. And then 5 years later, 1950, on this date, Silly Putty goes on sale in the United States. I never did like Silly Putty because it stunk. It always gave me a headache to smell that stuff. But anyway. Three more things I thought were interesting. Actually, two in the world of boxing. I didn't really plan this. 1964, Cassius Clay joins the Nation of Islam and changes his name to Muhammad Ali. So, this date in 1981, Walter Cronkite signs off as the anchor of the CBS Evening News, and thus ended the era of unbiased news in the United States. But anyway, that's personal opinion. And then in 1985, Mike Tyson's first professional fight. And so, as you can imagine, first round KO. So, anyway. All right, there you go. That happened on this date. All right. Y'all ready for some fun? Oh, that's right. And Chantel, thank you for the her dad's birthday is today. He turns 92. So, yeah, happy birthday. Tell him we said happy birthday. Everybody here gave a collective wow to that one. All right. A couple of weeks ago, I made a big mistake. I don't know how far we're going to get actually in Book of Revelation, but I made a mistake a couple of weeks ago. My first mistake was thinking that what I was talking about, I really didn't need to talk about in depth. And so I glossed over it. And in glossing over it, first of all, I missed out on something that is remarkable in sharing with y'all and has really a lot of relevance to our study of the book of Revelation, and specifically the tribulation. But almost worse than that is in glossing over it, I made it such a point of confusion. Everybody was kind of looking at me, you know, how you're well, I don't want to call y'all dogs. That's terrible. But, you know, when your puppy goes like them, I got a lot of those looks that day. So if y'all weren't here 2 weeks ago, you know I'm not talking about you. But
We were doing it last week, 2 weeks.
so how could you be doing that last week? It was understandable last week. There was no math involved last week. So I am going backwards. And I could have done this last week. I could have. But I really felt like this, and should have, before we launched into Revelation 6:1. Because now we just got into that, 4 verses into it, two judgments, 2 seals into it. And now I'm going to interrupt it again. If I thought we could get, and I mean, there's a possibility we could get there, but it's not likely. I don't know, maybe. But I need you to turn to Daniel chapter 9 again, and we're going to stop here for a moment and look at this and just kind of do a little bit of calculation, historical calculations. Daniel chapter 9 and in verse 24. I think 2 weeks ago we read through, and we'll look through this. Daniel chapter 9 verse 24 says, 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. So, we see that here in this 70 weeks, there are going to be some major things that are going to take place. And very quickly, we'll just see what the purposes are. There are 6 purposes for this 70 weeks in Daniel. And then we'll talk about what they are. Number 1 is to finish the transgression. Now, what is the greatest transgression for the nation of Israel? Can anybody tell me? It is not a trick question. They rejected their Messiah. They waited for him for hundreds of years. He came, and they said no thanks. So, 70 weeks, and the transgression is going to be over and done with. Okay? It will come to a head. It will be completed. The second purpose is to make an end of sins. So, that cannot happen unless without a sacrifice being made for those sins. They must be dealt with. And of course, in God's economy, we know that was through the sacrificial system, and the ultimate sacrifice had to be made. So that's going to happen within 70 weeks. Also in 70 weeks, in those 3 things, it says to make an atonement for iniquity, so that those who have been separated from God because of those sins will be brought back to Him. Okay? So that's going to happen in those 70 weeks. It says there to usher in everlasting righteousness. And that is, again, the sins come to an end, they're brought to a head, they're dealt with, and so righteousness is then ushered in. And then to seal up the vision and the prophecy. We got all the stuff that we read about in this Bible. I mean, we got 66 books. I'm not even sure how many chapters there are. I don't know how many words there are. I don't know how many promises there are, but they've got to be brought to completion so that all of history will come to its apex. Okay? And then we're going to anoint the most holy city. I mean, the most holy place, I guess. And if you'll look in your Bible, that word place is italicized, right? That means that it is inserted. It was not in the original. So really what we're going to do is we're going to anoint the most holy. And an argument could be made that it's talking about the most holy one, meaning the Messiah, meaning none other than Jesus. He'll be anointed. All that's what this whole 70 weeks that's in the book of Daniel, it is meant to do those six things. Okay? Now, he goes on and he's going to say, verse 25, so you're to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Messiah Prince, there will be 70 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. So, after the 62 weeks, so there's after the 7 weeks, there's going to be the rebuilding of the temple. And guess what? Within, okay, so I guess now's the time we've got to be reminded of some things that we talked about last week. I tried to give a little bit of clarity, okay? And some of the problem that we have is with this word week, because we are so ingrained in our own minds, 21st century minds, and I guess really for most of us in this room, we're really more 20th century minds, but whatever. All we think of as weeks, we think of 7 days, okay? But to the ancients, a week was not necessarily 7 days. It was 7 of anything. So you could have for instance, and I used this analogy last week, or this parallel last week, is a dozen. When we say something is a dozen, we can say, well, when I say a dozen, what do you think of? You might think a dozen eggs. You might think a dozen donuts. Absolutely. Yes. If you're anointed, that's what you think. Krispy Kreme in particular. It's 12 of whatever. Okay? So, when the Bible talks about weeks, it's 7 of something. So that it could be 7 days, but it could be, actually, check it out. We have a week of learners in here. There are 7 of y'all in this room. I don't know how many we have online. We don't have, okay. All right, we have a baker's dozen. I'm just kidding. So we have, it could be a week of anything. It could be 7 of anything. It could be a week of chairs. We have 7 chairs. A week of anything. So when Daniel is talking about a week, it is a week of years, meaning that it's a 7-year period. Every week is a 7-year period. Can we agree on that? We okay with that? 7 years. Okay? Now, he's going to say then, we'll get back to that in just a second. He says that after 7 weeks, so if a week is a 7-year period, times 7 of those, how many years are we talking about? What now?
Here's the math here.
Yeah, here comes math. 49 years, okay? So he says within 49 years, things will be rebuilt. Well, guess what? If you read through the history of the people moving back into their land, moving back into Israel after the exile, within 49 years, the temple was rebuilt. It was done. And so then he says, so that's the first, he kind of splits it up into 70 weeks and 62 weeks and so on and so forth, okay? But, so the 7 weeks is talking about the time until the rebuilding of the temple and the rebuilding of the city. 62 more weeks, and then the Messiah will be cut off. Jesus will die within that time frame. Okay? So, let's bring this back up. This is a big deal. Now we can, at what time does the countdown begin? Because he's giving us a countdown. He says, this number of years, okay, and at this particular time, the Messiah is going to be cut off. When does that time frame begin? Well, we do have the, I guess, we do have the date. We have a good time to bring that back to, Okay, we know when that clock is going to begin. In Nehemiah chapter 2, and you don't have to turn there, but in Nehemiah chapter 2, the king of Persia sends the people back to rebuild Jerusalem. And we know that the year for that sending back, we know because the Bible record gives it to us, that year was in 445 BC. Now, again, because we know the biblical record as compared to other dates, extra biblical literature, we know when Artaxerxes was the king of Persia. We know all that stuff. We know when these things took place. And so we know we can pinpoint the date. We can pinpoint the date to March the 14th of 445 BC. Okay? We know that. And it is verifiable by anybody who wants to do the math. Okay? And wants to do the study of Jewish history and the ancients and how they, when their months began and so on and so forth. Because their months were not January through December like ours is. Their month began in Nisan, I think in April is when their month began. So, is when their year began, is their first month. So we know that this is the date when the edict was given, go and build your city. And within 49 years, the city was rebuilt. But bigger than that, the bigger picture that we would care about, I mean, we care about the temple being rebuilt, those kind of things. But we're looking at a 69-week period, right? 69 sets of 7 years. 69 times 7 is 483.
So where'd you get 69? I thought it was 70.
Okay, we're getting there, okay? Yes. 70 weeks is the bigger picture, but right now all he has said is, in here he said,
24 says 70 weeks have been decreed for your people.
that's right, yes. And then in verse 25, in the next verse, he's going to break it down.
7
To decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Messiah Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. That's the 69 weeks. See what I mean? Okay? The 7 plus 62 is 69. All right? So there are two time periods, one till the building of Jerusalem, and then extended on to the time of Messiah. So we got 69 weeks, 69 sets of 7 years. That's a total of 483 years. You can do the math in your phone if you don't want to do it in your head. Okay? You right? Are we right? Are you doing it on your calculator? Okay. All right. So you can do it on your calculator. 483 years. Now, how many days are in a year?
for us?
Yeah.
365.
365. That is correct. Let's leave a year like this year. Okay? All right. Not true for the ancients. Not true. Their years were 360 days. Okay? Now that's why, when you start calculating in stuff and people are like, well, and we say that Jesus was born in 4 BC. Well, how did Jesus become before Christ? How did that happen? Because we switched calendars, okay, to make up for all the right days. But in the Jewish year, there were 360 days in a year. So if we're talking about 483 years times 360 days, you have a total of 173,880 days total. Okay? Now, Messiah, Jesus, makes his way into Jerusalem on what we know of as Palm Sunday. And again, through different things, and if you really want to get into it and you want your mind blown and all that kind of stuff, we can make a big deal about it. We can go through all the calculations and all that fun stuff. But we know, again, from the biblical record and using extra biblical sources, we know that the date that Jesus entered into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday was April the 6th, the year 32. We know that to be true. Now, many days do you think it is in the Jewish calendar between March the 14th, 445 BC, and April the 6th, year 32?
173,880.
Exactly that number. So that, and I did mention this 2 weeks ago, after I really blew everything else. When Jesus enters into Jerusalem and he weeps over the city because they did not know the hour, it was given to them in what for them, not for us, but what for them would have been a simple mathematical equation if they had just been paying attention. He said, you didn't know. I'm here. It's all given to you, and you're totally blowing. You're totally missing. Yes,
I
ma'am.
got a question for you. Saying Jesus was born in 4 BC,
Mhm.
and that, the April of 32, that's 80. I've always heard that Jesus was 33 when he died. That would make him 36.
Yeah, well, and all that stuff, all those things are, as far as his birth, those are,
Approximation.
yes, because we don't know. We don't know for sure. And again, when you're talking about all that stuff, you are looking at,
The 360 versus 365 as we do.
yes, because you're looking at, what is it, conversion of Julian to Gregorian calendars and all that stuff. I mean, that's where all those waters get muddied up. From our vantage point, because we're on the other side of the modern day calendar from where they were. So, yes. So anyway,
So the average Jew would not have access to being able to figure that out for themselves?
the modern day Jew,
No.
back then, oh yeah, they would have. Yes, they knew. Because they knew what weeks meant. They knew it meant 7 years. They knew how many days were in their years. They knew when, because they had it recorded for them in Nehemiah, when they were told to go back and build Jerusalem, just like we do. I mean, they've got the same Old Testament that we do. They could go back and do the math if they chose to. They simply, since Jesus wasn't what they wanted him to be, they're going to have to reinterpret what the Bible very clearly says. That's very difficult. But the people do that all the time. I mean, that's what the Mormons do. That's what Jehovah's Witnesses do, because Jesus hadn't bodily come back yet, and so they have to reconfigure what they meant, because 1914 for them Jesus was supposed to come back, and probably about 7 or 8 times since then. So people do that all the time, and that's what the Jews have to do.
Okay, I'm thinking about Joseph of Arimathea now.
Good.
So would he have been a man who said, aha, this is the Christ, when he asked for Jesus' body? He figured it out then? Was it then when he figured it out?
So again, I don't know what the people, I don't know what y'all at home can hear, but the question is Joseph of Arimathea, did he figure all this out finally? And I don't know how many people would have done the calculations to know. Those who believed, I doubt that they believed because they did math. I think they believed because they saw his life, they saw maybe even how he died, and they were convinced. So that would be what I would think. I don't know that he ever came to these calculations. I don't know who did and who didn't. But yeah, good question.
I mean, obviously, the apostles would not have, just because of what they saw in Jesus when he walked and he taught and everything that he did, but Joseph seemed to come from out of that group, for me, what I know about it, and I just wondered if he had an aha moment.
It's possible. I don't know. I don't guess there's any way for us to know that because it wasn't recorded. But okay, So, something that Bruce astutely reminded us of when we first pulled up this board was that we're really dealing with 70, not 69. And all I have given you is 69. We've given you calculations based on 69 weeks of years. Where's the last one? That's the question. Where is week number 70? Where's the last 7 years? That's why we study Revelation chapter 6. Because Revelation chapter 6 ushers in the 70th week of Daniel. You see, all this other stuff that we talked about, the 69 weeks that he says has to occur, these things have happened. There's been, the Messiah has been given up. He's been cut off. He has made atonement for sin. He's given people an access back to God to close up that gap that was created by sin. The thing that has been left to occur, at least in my estimation, the thing that is left to occur of those 6 things that we started out talking about was the anointing of the Most Holy, where Jesus is crowned King of Kings. And we're getting there in week number 70. The last week of Daniel, the last 7 years. Another reason why people might say that the tribulation, the 7 years is really just symbolic of completion and those kind of things. Maybe, I guess, maybe. But why would we even think that? Especially when we have mathematical calculations that to the day bring this to fulfillment. Why would we suddenly take the 70th week and say, oh, that's just symbolic? That makes sense to me. But I do have another question, though. And so we're obviously not getting the book of Revelation. So why all of a sudden, if we had these 69 weeks that went from the time of Nehemiah, from the Artaxerxes giving his decree the way that he did, and it went straight through all the way up until the time that Jesus dies, and now all of a sudden here we are 2,000 years later and we hadn't gotten to the 70th week yet. Why was there a break? You ever thought about that? That's a good question. Should be a good answer. Enter Mad Magazine. Do y'all remember Mad Magazine? For those of you who are at home, I apologize that you cannot participate in this with us, but maybe you'll get the gist of it. So you're going to have to hold on for just a second. I honestly do apologize. I'm not even kidding about that, because I know that when you're sitting here watching, you may want to fast forward a little bit. Maybe I'll go like this when it's time to get back in, okay? But it would be cool for you just to kind of sit there for a second and watch what goes on. But Mad Magazine, here we go. Y'all remember how to do the last part, the fold in of Mad Magazine? I never could get Mad Magazine because my parents wouldn't get it for me. They didn't want to give me something that was so mindless, I think. They didn't have like a ton of money, so they couldn't just blow it on something. But, okay, here's how you do the fold in. Can you see on the top up here on your left, there's an A and an arrow. And down at the bottom, you go straight down to the bottom, there's an A and an arrow right there too. I want you to fold it at the tip of those arrows, all the way down. Fold it.
You're asking a lot.
Yes, I know. Put your glasses on, man. Come on. Yeah, just fold it at the A. At the arrow. Yep. I think it's user error. Well, I think that is.
So it wouldn't do that. Do we do the B too?
Okay, so hold on real quick. Yes, you will. At the top, notice who will come out on top in this year's March Madness is the question. Okay, right above that A. Okay, so fold it at the B also. This is so fun. Aren't y'all having fun at home? Okay, you got it all folded? Now here's what you got to do. You got to kind of open it up and put the two creases together. See that?
It makes a whole new picture.
It makes a whole new picture. And so, and what is the answer? Who will come out on top in this year's March Madness? Because it's probably the same answer. This is long ago. This is from years back. Probably the same answer. Yeah. Once again, the bookies. Y'all see how that works?
Yes.
Okay, now check this out. All right. This to me is I don't know what made me think of this a few years back. This is the coolest thing to think of. The reason why you get to 69 weeks, and now we've had at least, to this point, we've had a 2,000 year break before we get to to week number 70, 70th year of Daniel. The reason is because Old Testament prophecy is always dealing with the nation of Israel, not us. There aren't prophecies concerning you and the church. Not prophecies concerning you and me. The prophecies in the Old Testament are talking about Israel. Now, what in the world does that have to do with this? Well, I want you to think of it like this. This is the Old Testament time where God dealt with the nation of Israel. Sometimes he would prophesy about them. It was when Israel was the platform through which God spoke and worked in the world, the nation of Israel. This here in the middle, between the two creases that you have created, this here is the church age. This is where you and I are. This is after Jesus comes, and at this crease, he comes, he dies, and he goes up to heaven, and he creates the church. Acts chapter 1 and following. He creates the church, and he goes through to this day. And at this crease, I guess you could say maybe that's the rapture. It is the end of the church age. And in the middle here, in this church age, the church becomes the platform through which God works and speaks to this world. But when the church is raptured out, God still wants to continue to speak to the world. He's still going to save people. There's still going to be evangelists. He's still going to work in this world. And how is he going to do that? Through Israel once again. Romans chapters 9 through 11. Is Israel then cut off? Oh no, by no means. May it never be. He will once again work through the nation of Israel, so that when we come to prophecy, while all of history looks like this, prophecy looks like this. So that we have over here, we have the first 69 weeks of Daniel. And right here, we have the 70th week. In the economy of God, there is no break. There's none. It's going to go straight across. Now, for our vantage point from history, oh yeah, we got a break here. What's the deal? It starts here and it ends here, and we're somewhere in the middle. But in God's economy, it's just like it is one totally different picture. Okay? So, we're kind of, when it comes to, one of the ways I like to say it, when it comes to, I forgot to give that. Sorry. When it comes to prophecy, you and I really don't even exist. I mean, it just kind of totally skips over us. We're just like a blurb on the boop, and we're done. Even after 2,000 years. If he tarries another 1,000 years, even after 3,000 years, it's just a blip on the screen. And for him, it just goes straight across. So why is there a break? Well, in God's process, there's not. It's only from our vantage point in history that there is. And so this time is coming when he's going to come back, and there's going to be this terrible, terrible 7-year period known as the tribulation. We have already opened the first 2 judgments. Remember, the first one was that we talked about last week was false peace. And then the second one is going to be that peace is going to be totally obliterated, and there's going to be wars and rumors of wars. World War II, as bad as it was, will pale in comparison. And we're going to see the outcome of those wars starting next week. I had on here that we'll be starting in verse 5 of chapter 6. We'll do that next week. But we're going to see the outcome of those wars, and it is going to be on a massive, massive scale, like 2 billion people dying in no time at all. We lose, like, we get in a war and, there are 20,000 casualties and people go nuts. 2 billion people will die in warfare. And I don't know what the time frame is, but you're probably talking in less than a year. So all the nuclear stuff that we have, and the capabilities that are there, people are afraid. Should be. It'll come into great use. Okay. Questions? Well, either I explained it really well or I made it even worse. So, okay, what prayer requests do you have? If you got any prayer requests, you can go ahead and start putting them in the comment section there online. We'll do this kind of quick. Any prayer requests here in the room?
I have a good friend, Harriet Blissett.
Harriet Blissett. Okay, all right.
And she just asked that we remember her in prayer due to sickness, is what her words were.
Okay, all right. Harriet, let's pray for Harriet. Sickness. Continue to pray for my father-in-law. He is home. He came home Saturday, but he's still got a little ways to go, long way to go. So, in prayer for him.
Mike Holtz's brother, I want to say his name's Mark.
Mike Holtz's brother. Okay.
And Regina Bronson, she's recovering from knee replacement.
Okay. All right, Gina.
Yeah, she's in the therapy part.
All right. Doing therapy.
We got a person in leadership position of SHP that's having surgery tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Sleep in heavenly peace. And Alicia. Mhm. All right. I haven't seen. Nothing's come up online. So. Okay. All right. Let's go to God in prayer, and then we'll be on our way. God, we thank you for the amazing accuracy of your word. I don't know why we're amazed as you, and you don't make mistakes and you don't tell lies. And so everything that you say is true and it will be true. I guess we just thank you for the way that we can see that unfolding right in front of us. So God, I pray that we would have great faith and trust as you tell us, whether it's things to do with our life right now or whether it's the unfolding of the end times. May we always see the truthfulness in it and believe it even when it doesn't always make sense. Help us to follow you in faith. And so that certainly applies when we bring prayer requests to you, because there are things that are going on that we don't know all the details. We don't know why. And we certainly don't know where it's going. So, Lord, we entrust the requests that we've made here. Several who are sick or are recovering, who have had surgery or in need of surgery. We've got, and then of course there are a lot of issues that we face that aren't necessarily physical in nature, but for whatever reason we're not quite as eager to talk about those out loud. But Lord, you are God over those also, and so we lay these things at your feet, and we just ask that you would have your will and your way in each and every one. God, as we go about our lives the rest of this week, help us to always be mindful of those who need acceptance. They need love. They might just need a friendly word, a gesture. Some might need the gospel. Help us to be about that business and help us to represent you well. And then we look forward to being together again on Sunday where we can worship you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank y'all. We will see y'all Sunday.